This time on Distant Shores, we're planning out the energy requirements of our new custom aluminum sailboat. Will the hybrid power system allow us to make the passages we're planning from Europe to the Arctic Circle, as well as the long ocean crossings we normally do around the world?
We're Cheryl and Paul Shard, hosts of the Distant Shores Sailing Adventure TV series. We've been cruising and living aboard for 33 years, documenting the sailing lifestyle. Join us for the building of our fifth boat, a custom aluminum Orion 49.
We did a series of videos on electrical power on sailboats 3 years ago. It's a good primer on the basics of electricity if you're not sure about volts, amps, watts and all. This is important, so we got two of me involved in the filming. The link is here. We also went through how we made an electrical budget and showed what our power use was with our last boat, both at anchor and at sea. But now, as we're building the new aluminum sailboat with hybrid power, we want to go through that exercise again to account for the hybrid drive system and the all-electric galley. Converting to electric cooking seems like it should be a desirable goal and should work if you have a large battery bank. For 33 years, we've cruised with a propane stove and oven, and although we liked cooking with them, it was often difficult to find a place to refill our propane tanks. Taxis and buses often don't allow you aboard with tanks, either full or empty, so we often ended up walking. A full 20-pound steel propane cylinder weighs well over 30 pounds. That gets very heavy while lugging it around. Great, so we want electric cooking, but how much energy will it use, and where will we get this energy from? Our good friends Brian and Karen on SV Delos converted to electric cooking before we were aboard Delos in Antigua back in 2019, and they've been loving it.
We have our new induction stove.
Oh, you guys have gone for the electric and induction.
Yeah, with the new lithium batteries. It's actually working out really good. We have a little convection toaster oven, which is absolutely incredible. I think this oven is the biggest change for me. It's so nice. It's just like we cooked the whole turkey for like 4 hours, and it's just awesome.
Check out their informative video here or in the link below. Since then, Brian has done summary calculations on their power use from the electric galley and came up with an approximate daily average of 1.5 kilowatt hours per day. A kilowatt hour is a measure of energy. 1 kilowatt hour would be the energy required to run a 1 kilowatt appliance for 1 hour or a 2 kilowatt appliance for half an hour. Don't forget that if you have always cooked with a fuel such as propane, when you switch to electric cooking, you will need to generate and store the extra energy that used to be stored in propane. 20 pounds of propane equates to roughly 108 kilowatt hours of electrical energy. We used to get about 2 months of cooking from 20 pounds of propane with the way we cooked, and we eat great aboard Distant Shores. Throw a comment below if you have experience with electric cooking on your boat. Seriously, we'd love to hear from you. What are the other main energy requirements we'll need to consider? Here's the biggest potential energy draw. As sailors, naturally we enjoy sailing and we sail whenever we can. And if it's completely calm, sometimes we will just float around or go swimming, like this time in the middle of the Atlantic delivering a 50-foot catamaran.
On this day, we and our crew were 1,000 miles from the closest point of land on a transatlantic passage.
But often, for various reasons, we make the decision to motor along and to make some miles. It's a personal decision, and I'd be interested to hear what you would do in this case. Would you motor to get in sooner, say if it was getting dark, or it looked like headwinds, or a storm was coming across your path? How will things change when we drive the boat with an electric motor? Let's compare the two energy sources, diesel versus electric. How much electrical energy do we need to replace the diesel we carry in our tank? Taking into account the relative efficiency of the diesel motor versus the electric drive, we can compare 1 liter of diesel to approximately 3.5 kilowatt hours of electrical energy. That means one of these large 7 kilowatt hour batteries equates to just 2 liters of diesel, about half a gallon. We think nothing of revving up the motor and pushing through head seas for an hour or so to get in before dark. And if that required running at 7 knots, we'd be burning 7 liters of diesel per hour. I'm planning a battery bank storing about 30 kilowatt hours of energy. That bank will likely cost between $20,000 and $30,000. That might power our electric drive a little over 5 knots for 2 to 3 hours at the most. I think the comment section on this video is going to be very interesting. So a pure electric drive sailboat isn't practical for our cruising plans, but a hybrid diesel-electric drive has some appealing advantages. I have high hopes we will be able to regenerate a reasonable amount of energy by sailing and using the prop to spin the electric hybrid drive. We will have a 21-inch feathering 4-blade propeller, and I'm hoping we get around 400 watts at 6 knots of boat speed and as much as 900 watts at 8 knots. Bear in mind that engaging the prop to regenerate power will likely slow the boat down by half a knot or so. Even if we stay in warmer climates, we usually need to heat water for showers. Back in the old days on our first boat, two-step, we didn't have a water heater, so every time we wanted a shower, we boiled the water in a kettle on our propane stove. Then on our southerly yachts, we had a hot water tank for the first time. This was most appreciated on cold northern days, such as sailing in Scotland. Most hot water tanks have 2 heating elements. The first is an electric element, which works when you're connected to shore power, and the other is a heat exchanger, which works when running the main engine by transferring waste heat from the engine coolant to the water tank. After the engine is warmed up, maybe 15 minutes or so, then it will start heating the water in the tank. Depending on the size of the tank, it might take more than half an hour to heat the water. We found this hot water might last us 1 or 2 days, depending how frugal we were with our showers. If we try to heat water with electricity, it could take 3 kilowatt hours, depending on how much hot water was left in the tank and what the ambient water temperature is. In 33 years of offshore cruising, I can't recall any times we needed to have air conditioning while actually sailing. That includes over 120,000 miles of passage making. Perhaps we're well adjusted to the tropics, but even on hot days off watch in a bunk, a small fan moved enough air to cool us down. Being at anchor is a different situation. None of our boats have had AC installed, and we can count on 2 hands the number of times we wished for aircon while resting at anchor. Mostly it was cool enough with a nice light breeze blowing. Those days we wanted it were mostly windless evenings in the Bahamas, where the mosquitoes made the trip out from shore because of the light winds. I know the main time we wished we had AC was when tied up at a windless marina dock. The summer we sailed to the Middle East, we really had trouble keeping cool, especially when the temperature often exceeded 100 Fahrenheit. Air conditioning will definitely use a lot of power, especially if running it on a hot sunny day. Trying to run it off batteries is probably best reserved for short runs of a few hours, mainly to cool the sleeping cabin off in the evening. Doug and Maggie, who now own one of our previous boats, added air conditioning units after they bought the boat. Doug reports that they can air condition the forward sleeping cabin from the battery bank at a rate of about 300 watts, or 3 kilowatt hours for an entire night. This is using a 10,000 BTU unit in low power mode. They don't plan to do this at anchor every night, just for special occasions. Our first boat only had 320 liters of water capacity in 4 small tanks, but we occasionally managed to make that last up to 30 days between filling the water tanks. 320 liters divided by 30 days means we use just 11 liters a day, about 3 gallons. But then we got a Watermaker, and we've become a whole lot less frugal with water use. Now we use more like 20 to 30 liters or more per day between the 2 of us. The new boat has 2 water tanks, each of 300 liters, located low down over the keel. And we will be installing a Watermaker. The front runner is an energy-efficient Schenker Smart 60. That model will use 1/4 of a kilowatt in 1 hour to produce a very generous 60 liters or 15 gallons of fresh water. So with just the two of us, we'll likely run it for an hour every 2 days, with guests on board perhaps an hour every day. We have experience with 2 different heating methods on our past sailboats. On all 4 of our boats, we have used portable electric heaters. We usually buy 2 or 3 of them and plug them in each cabin. This heating solution uses typically 1.5 kilowatts per heater, so you can only use them when plugged into the shore power. If it's below freezing, the heater will need to be on all the time and will likely use much more than 10 kilowatt hours a day. Basically, electric heaters would be only turned on when connected to shore power. On our Southerly 49, we had an S-Bar brand forced air heater installed by the factory. This is a small furnace in the back locker that burns something like half a liter of diesel fuel, which is blown to different cabins through insulated hoses. It's a bit expensive, but heats the boat quickly and generally allowed us to have a comfortable cruise north, leaving England in May, and sailing up through Scotland to Norway. Note that these heaters have a fairly powerful fan to force the air through the ducts, which uses something like 40 to 80 watts. So a day of running the heater could use up to 12 liters of diesel and 2 kilowatt hours of electric energy. One disadvantage of the forced air heat is that a lot of ducting needs to be run to each outlet. We found many lockers were filled up with ducts that we would have preferred to use for storage. The third type of heater, and the one favored by many people who sail in colder climates, is hydronic heating. It's similar to the last example, a forced air heater, in that it has a furnace burning diesel to produce the heat, but instead of forcing air around, it heats water and pumps the water around to small radiators in each cabin. It has 2 big advantages. For one, this system also heats up the hot water tank so you get hot showers. Another advantage is that hot water tubing conducting the water to the radiators takes much less space than the large insulated air ducts needed for the forced air heating. Let's take a look at how much energy we would need and where it would come from, comparing the hybrid power system to our previous boats for a few sample cruises. The Caribbean is one of the world's top cruising grounds. Plenty of sunshine means our 1,000 watts of solar panels could produce from 4 to 5 kilowatt hours of energy on a typical sunny day unless shaded by the sails. Picking up anchor and raising sails, we might operate electric drive for 5 minutes at the start and end of the day's sail. That's 10 minutes at 2 kilowatts for propulsion, 0.66 kilowatt hours. Then we might sail for 4 or 5 hours, enjoying the fine trade wind breezes, normally quite reliable. We would add our 1/5 of a day energy underway at 0.9 kilowatt hours and 4/5 of a day's energy used at anchor of 2.4 kilowatt hours. Add in 1/4 kilowatt hour to desalinate water, 1.5 kilowatt hours for cooking, and 1 or 2 kilowatt hours to heat water for crew showers. Altogether, we're looking at around 7 or 8 kilowatt hours of energy use per day, which we could get 60% from solar, and then turn on regeneration for 3 hours spinning the propeller to generate the other 40%.
And while we're on the subject of Caribbean sailing, every year we offer a week or 2 in the tropics, where we introduce people to the cruising lifestyle. This year, 8 days in the beautiful British Virgin Islands. This fantastic cruising ground is the perfect place to try out cruising in a comfortable, friendly environment. For 2023, we've chartered a 52-foot catamaran with 4 luxurious double cabins, each with private ensuite head and shower. There are still cabins available if you'd like to come along. No sailing experience necessary, but you're free to join in and sail the boat as much as you'd like. We both love helping people discover the sailing life.
We have done 9 Atlantic crossings, and there were mostly good winds the whole way. For this passage, we would not need any electric energy for propulsion, and we'd expect to use 4.5 kilowatt hours on passage, plus 1/4 kilowatt hour to desalinate water, 1.5 kilowatt hour for cooking, and 1 or 2 kilowatt hours to heat water for crew showers. Altogether, we're looking at around 8 kilowatt hours energy use per day, which we could get 50% from solar, and then turn on regeneration for 4 or 5 hours, spinning the propeller to generate electricity for the other 50%. Finally, we can look at an example of heading up to the Arctic Circle. Here we won't expect to get so much power from solar panels, and we'll need power for heat, both in the boat and water heating. I'm not planning for more than 1 or 2 kilowatt hours of solar power even in the northern summer, and less when the sun is lower in the early spring or late summer. A typical day's budget of 3 kilowatt hours will be increased by 1.5 kilowatt hours for cooking, and even more to heat water for showers. We're definitely going to need to run the diesel heater much of the time, which also uses 2 kilowatt hours of electricity. Without much solar power, we will need to run the diesel engine for an hour to replace the shortfall of perhaps 8 kilowatt hours. The hybrid drive should handle that in an hour of motoring, taking advantage of the generator function, which produces up to 10 kilowatts of power. These are some of the things we've been considering while creating a power budget for our new Enksail Orion 49 as we continue our search for the hybrid power system that can meet our needs. How about you? Would you consider electric drive on your sailboat? Do you have experience with hybrid power for cruising on your boat? Share your thoughts in the comments below.
Join us next time when we take you to the Netherlands for a visit to MetsTrade, the annual marine equipment trade show in Amsterdam. Then give you an update on the build of Distant Shores 4, featuring a very special visit with some of your favorite sailing YouTubers, Matt and Jessica Sailing, Odd Life Crafting, Sailing Uma,
Seems overkill.
What you'd think about it if you were head off.
and Earl Wrights.
This is the newest boat I have ever stepped on in my entire life. It's so shiny.